How do you interpret all of this?
You know, to be honest, let's start from the beginning. I'm going to start by placing the blame on those on the far left and the loud pro-Palestinian voices that were making Josh Shapiro himself answer for himself, and something that they would have never done to a Jewish leader in general, right? Where he really had to come out there repeatedly on his positions and on his faith, and that's not fair and that's not American, and that's something that ended up being a gift for Republicans. It was just a gift that was thrown into Trump's lap, and to further perpetuate that he wasn't chosen for anti-Semitic reasons is not fair, and it's ugly because. First of all, there's no reason to believe that, other than the fact that this was put out there in the press, and it was just that Shapiro himself had to keep answering for this. But also, it undermines our own American values, our own morals, and also how we look abroad. If this kind of idea that this is why he wasn't chosen is understood by the Middle East, by those abroad, then that's something they're going to think is something that's acceptable, that anti-Semitism is acceptable, that it is here in the United States strong and well from the very top. And I will say one last point, which is that I really do think, as a communications person, when you don't shape the narrative, others are going to shape it for you. And it is critical, it is incumbent on Vice President Harris to go out there and set the record straight and explain, no, that is not why she didn't choose him, and offer as many details as she can. Otherwise, this story is going to keep being repeated, particularly by Trump and Vance.
Well, and Hagar, it's not just accusations of anti-Semitism. It's specifically this idea of an anti-Israel sentiment. And some people are pointing to the much more pointed remarks we heard from the vice president after her meeting with Netanyahu here in Washington last month. This idea that she may be pushing even harder for a ceasefire. Is pushing for a ceasefire in and of itself an anti-Israel position, or is a ceasefire actually in Israeli interest? Are we missing the point here?
No, well, so I believe that a ceasefire is in Israel's interest, of course, but there is a gap between Israel's goals, the goals of the Netanyahu government, and the U.S. goals in this war. The U.S. goals are to reach a ceasefire, to get the hostages released, to defeat Hamas's military and governing capabilities, and to quickly pivot to some kind of deal with Saudi Arabia and others so that they can look ahead to the future, to a two-state solution and to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is a great goal, but very far-fetched from where we're standing at the moment. Israel's goals are to significantly defeat, if not eradicate, these terrorist groups. And Hamas is not the only one. They are also looking at Hezbollah and other Iran-backed groups. And that's why you're seeing them pursue this policy of killing terrorist leaders. That is a common counterterrorism policy that, by the way, not only Israel chooses that policy, but the U.S., UK, France. France is the one that arguably started that counterterrorism objective by, dismantling them and their capabilities by targeting the leaders. And so when you have that gap, all of that, discussing that, figuring out whether you prefer a ceasefire or you're going to hold off on a ceasefire has nothing to do with anti-Semitism or being pro or anti-Israel. It's really just a different means to an end. And the U.S. deeply believes, and I would agree, that reaching a ceasefire now and that Hamas has been significantly defeated at the moment does help Israel secure itself in the long term. And that's what the U.S. wants to see. But again, the Israeli government does have different goals, and they want to get all those terrorist leaders when they can.
Well, Hagar, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is talking with Arab capitals officials who we have relationships with to help to avoid a retaliatory strike or series of strikes by Iran against Israel. Yesterday, we spoke with Michael Allen, the managing director at Beacon Global Strategies, who said this is not likely something that you can stop. Let's listen.
I think for their own sake, their own deterrence, their own toughness in the region, and the appearance that they need to give to their proxies, they have to do something. The Iranians want to do it differently than last time. Last time everything was intercepted. I think they actually want to feel like they landed a punch this time.
What would it look like in this case to land a punch, Hagar?
Well, so let me tell you what we know. We know that Iran is planning some kind of coordinated attack, according to the Biden administration, planning a coordinated attack with all of its proxies. So Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, and probably the West Bank and other groups in Syria. And by pursuing something coordinated, it means that they're likely going to go around Israel from every angle. And when you overwhelm a system like the Iron Dome, even when the U.S. is there helping, and by the way, Saudi Arabia and Jordan have also pledged that they will help because they don't want missiles flying over their airspace, then the fact is when you overwhelm a system, you're going to have a greater chance of something getting in. And Iran did say that they want to punish Israel. And they relayed a message through Hungary saying that they will attack Israel, but also that they don't want a full-scale war. Now, listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this for you. We are already in some kind of low-grade war, and the U.S. is already dragged in it. If we have already intercepted missiles, we are already in the Red Sea attacking Houthis in Yemen, and so we are already involved to somewhat. But what prevents this from becoming a war like you see in Ukraine and Russia is the fact that they know that the U.S. would defend Israel. And they don't want to get Hezbollah, Iran, they don't want to get into a war with the United States. So I expect something where you're going to see something at least that overwhelms the system so that they get some missiles through or drones or whatever they do. And Israel will respond. And the response I see is, again, some kind of response where, again, it doesn't escalate things even more, but probably more in Lebanon in particular. I wouldn't be surprised if they strike the airport after this, the runway, for example, or infrastructure, roads, and certainly more terrorist leaders. And you're going to see this, I think, as we go forward, these kind of peaks, and it'll go down a bit, and again, a peak, and it'll go down. But that is this kind of drumbeat of a war that we are in until a ceasefire is reached.
Just on the subject of terrorist leaders, Hagar, before we let you go, Yahya Sinwar has now been named the political leader of Hamas after the former political leader was assassinated in an Israeli strike that was blamed on Israel in Tehran. How concerning is that, or is this just giving him another title with power he already had?
Yes, I'm excited you asked this question because I can really nerd out about it. Because Yahya Sinwar, who is currently cowering in a tunnel in Gaza while his people are dying and starving, he is the one who was really the mastermind behind October 7 and is very much a hardliner, very much in line with Iran and Iran's goals across the region, has no shred of mercy in him whatsoever. And he was up for the role against Khalid Mashal. Khalid Mashal is another one of the Hamas leaders who's living in the lap of luxury in Doha. And the fact that Khalid Mashal wasn't chosen says a lot, because Khalid Mashal has been on the outs a little bit with Iran for the last 10 years. And that was because when the Syria war started a decade ago, Khalid Mashal was living in Syria, and he left because he was so against what President Bashar al-Assad was doing to his people. And yet Syria, the Syrian government, was allied with Iran. And so after that, they were a little bit on the outs. And while they're all ugly, I mean, we're talking about ranking thugs here. Khalid Mashal was, if you will, the lesser of the hardliners. He was the one, he wanted to make a deal, for example, with the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas. That's not something that Yahya Sinwar wants. Now, so that's what it means, the fact that he was chosen. At the same time, one thing I'll say, the last point, is that ceasefire talks have been frozen because of the assassination against Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. However, Yahya Sinwar was the one negotiating anyway. And so I just expect those ceasefire talks to resume at a certain point soon.